Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Wake Up Call. This is our Friday live edition. And don't forget to put your questions in the chat. I want to thank you guys. We're coming up in 11 days, we'll be a year old. Contraband Camp will be a year old. Good morning, April Snyder. Hey, Carmelita. And my sister is on. I don't know if Carmelita saw the episode from yesterday about how I when we had days, it was a certain day to wash the dishes and a certain day to we had days for our chores and we would trade days. And I was telling them about how it was certain people's responsibility. Like Sean woke up first on Mondays, and then Sean would wake up Carmelita, and Carmelita would wake up me. So we had Carmelita would wake up Robin, Robin would wake up me. So we had it was like a sliding scale. I don't know how we came up with a system so complicated, but we had rules upon rules upon rules. And so if one person was mad, we were so bad. If one person was mad at the other one, we might kind of forget to wake them up in time for school, because it was we basically lived by the standard I am my brother and my sister's keeper. That was the literal rule in our house. That was the rule we lived by. If one of us got in trouble, all of us got in trouble. So sometimes, if I forgot to take out the trash, my sister Carmelita, who's in this room, she would be like, I took out the trash for you. And sometimes she charged me like a day of washing dishes for it. Or sometimes she'd be like, yeah, I just didn't want us all to get in trouble. Because again, that's kind of responsibility extends upon this country. Like if I forget to take out the trash, then the trash for the whole house piles up. And sometimes the dogs would get into the trash, and you doing your responsibility affects everybody else. Again, put your questions in the chat. I have some questions that people have been sending throughout the week. Good morning, Cynthia Delandro. One of the first questions was from the episode we did about Claudette Colvin, and somebody asked what I think I mentioned the Highlander Training School. And I don't know if I cut it out of the video or I mentioned it in the video, but the Highlander Training School is where white people stole, we shall overcome. I think I said it in the video, and I said, but that's a story for another day. Somebody asked for the story. So in 1948, and I know this because one of me and Carmelita's aunts actually went to the Highlander Training School, and our uncle Ike went to the Highlander Training School. My uncle Ike was a long time NAACP field director for South Carolina, and was one day he had this crazy idea, what if we elected a black dude to the Senate, to Congress from South Carolina, which hadn't happened since Reconstruction. And he recruited one of his old friends to run for Congress in South Carolina. And his friend won, which is why my uncle couldn't come to my graduation. I think he felt guilty because he sent me a card with $100 in it, which was the biggest graduation gift I got. But his friend won that congressional seat and still is in Congress, and that was Jim Clyburn. And Jim Clyburn kind of is a member of the family because my aunt married Jim Clyburn's nephew. So we do this thing at Congressional Black Caucus every year, talking about history and how it connects with today. We've actually done it was actually an episode of the Wake Up Call, and he has a book out which you guys should actually read. It was called The First Eight, and it is the first 8 Black South Carolinians that were in Congress, and it's a fascinating story. But anyway, so in 1940s, there was this tobacco uh, manufacturing this cigar manufacturing company in Charleston. It was the American Tobacco Company. American Tobacco Company was literally the largest company in the world. I mean, in America. And they had a plant in South Carolina, and most of the people who worked there were black women. There was a few white women. So they went on strike for better conditions, and the black women led the strike. And they knew that the only way that they could win was to get the white women on their side. And, typically that was a hard thing to do because, nobody wanted to listen to black people. And so they said, if y'all strike with us, we'll teach y'all some of these songs we'd be singing when we were working. And they changed some of the lyrics, and the lyrics to one of the songs was, we will organize and win. And they took that song. One of the strike leaders went to the Highlander Training School. The Highlander Training School was, again, this academy where, it was basically a training ground for activists. And they sang it, they taught it to the people at the Highlander Training School, which was mostly white, because it wasn't just civil rights, it was all kinds of activism. And just by happenstance, Pete Seeger happened to be visiting the Highlander Training School and heard the song, and he changed it to We Will Overcome, or We Shall Overcome. He recorded it, but black folks had always known that song. It was an old Negro spiritual for years. And that's how that song kind of became the song for the civil rights movement, because the next year after Pete Seeger recorded it, and the next year, the year after Rosa Parks went, they invited a dude named Martin Luther King. So Martin Luther King had, that's one of the things that we don't talk about the civil rights movement. We try to act like it was people coming up with their own ideas spontaneously, but we were training each other. You had to participate in many of the marches. You had to take a class in nonviolent resistance. And Martin Luther King learned from the black women. Ella Baker taught Martin Luther King many of the strategies that he used in protesting. And Martin Luther King was a nationally known figure since his Martin Luther King weekend among white people. But what you have to understand is Martin Luther King really wasn't a grassroots organizer. He was a figurehead that white people could get behind. And the interesting thing about when you think about the march from Selma to Montgomery, remember, Martin Luther King wasn't there at the first march. The march that was Bloody Sunday, Martin Luther King wasn't there. And they specifically chose not to invite Martin Luther King. Again, many of this stuff was led by black women. Amelia Boynton specifically chose not to invite Martin Luther King to the first march from Selma to Montgomery. And it was only after Bloody Sunday that he came to the second march, right? And people were mad at him for coming to the second march because, remember, the second march didn't make it to Montgomery. Martin Luther King turned the march around when he saw the police. And only the third march made it all the way to Montgomery. And we've been mythologizing the civil rights movement so long that a lot of the stuff we think about the civil rights movement is not true. We believe some of the same stuff that white people made up about the civil rights movement. And it's important to know the truth, right? So that's the origin of We Shall Overcome, or We Will Overcome, and how it became a song in the civil rights movement. Another person asked me, let me see, I'm looking at the questions now that I had separated out. What do I think of Stephen A. Smith? I don't. There's certain people you listen to and certain people you don't. And I tend not to listen to Stephen A. Smith. I've met Stephen A. Smith a few times. And I've even, so maybe 10, 12 years ago. A friend of mine, Carmelita knows him. Some of you, if you a long time, like from way back in the Root days, you may know Be Stuck from our days of Dim Thrones. So if you don't know, when Game of Thrones first aired, me and one of my best friends did a podcast on every episode, a breakdown after every episode called Dim Thrones. And me and Be Stuck was on the second episode of my first podcast that I started in 2012. And it was called The Black One. So me and Be Stuck have a long history. And we went to see Stephen A. Smith speak at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, probably in 2012, 13. And one of the talking points that he had during his lecture was why Black people should become Republicans. So Stephen A. Smith has been a Republican for a long time. Like, I think people are just now realizing that he's just a conservative dude. And so I don't think of him much beyond sports. And it's not that I dislike Stephen A. Smith or want to diss him or anything like that. I think a lot of times, I've written about him a lot of times, and I think a lot of times people misunderstand that when you write about somebody or criticize something someone says, there's a difference between that and criticizing that person. Like, I don't know Stephen A. Smith personally. I know a lot of my friends. I have friends who know him personally, and I don't know him. I can't say he's a bad person or he's a coon or what. All I can say is, here is a thing he said. Here is why it's not true. And in the case of Stephen A. Smith, you can say, here is a bunch of things he said. Why is it always about Black women? Why is it always, why does he always take the white side? That's not criticizing Stephen A. Smith. I don't think about Stephen A. Smith. But when he puts stuff into the public sphere, using his platform and the popularity that, let's be correct, right? Like, my criticism of Stephen A. Smith, of a lot of people, are about not just about the things they say. When you talk about Stephen A. Smith, when you talk about people criticize Charlemagne, when you talk about a lot of the criticism, a lot of those people got their platforms and got their credibility and got their status on ESPN or in the culture because of Black folks, because of their Black audience, because they traded on the culture. And when you use Black culture and Black folks and the credibility that Black folks landed you to attack Black people, to support people who do harm to Black people, someone should say something. It ain't about that person. It's about the things that they do. And there's a difference between that, right? Like, if you said, man, Michael Harriot is like, I don't like Michael Harriot, he seems mean. That's your personal criticism of me, and it's your right to not like me. But if you say, hey, Michael Harriot's political opinion is wrong, I can deal with that, right? Because you have a fundamental disagreement with something I said. And there are some people who don't agree with me. I can understand that. That's not a personal problem to me, right? That I understand that there are a lot of people who fundamentally disagree with my position on race, right? Some people think like it's incendiary. It's I'm sorry, my lips are getting too dry. It's too provocative. I understand that, right? Like, one of the things that allows white supremacy and racism to exist is that we've been fooled into thinking that there is something wrong with talking about race. Like, why everything has to be about race? Like, what's wrong with talking about race? Like, if a bunch of black dudes get together, or black folks in a barbershop or at Thanksgiving dinner, race is gonna come up. Like everybody but white people. I don't know what white people do by themselves when they themselves, but black people talk about race all the time. Like not in a demeaning way, not in a. We talk about race, right? Like I was talking to one of my cousins. My cousin Tyron is a chef. Like I don't want to say he can cook better than he's the best cook in the family because my aunts might take opinion with that. Like we raised Tyron, we taught him how to cook, but we were talking the other day, and we were talking about recipes and how you can't follow a recipe on the internet because the recipes on the internet are made for white palates. And that was about race. But it wasn't like negative, like white people don't season their food. Nah, when like the majority of people in the world don't like the level of seasoning that black people do, or like that people who are from the global south like, right? So you have to understand that when you're looking at a recipe. As a journalist, I have to understand that when I'm looking at uh, reading an article or looking at a news report, that this is made for white consumption. And so you have to read between the lines. There's nothing wrong with talking about race, right? Everybody, like, the only reason we believe that is because we think that whiteness is the default race. Um, so I don't think about Stephen A. Smith. Sometimes the things he do and the things he say come to my attention. And if I think it is something that is harmful to black folks, I'll say something. Right? Like when he talk about like, who is Bakari Sellers? Who, bruh, like I'm from South Carolina. And Bakari Sellers is legitimately the son of a hero. Aside from being a friend, like I know what the work that Bakari Sellers does every day. I know when I was saying last week that there are very few people who do this, who've seen police kill more people than I have. Bakari Sellers is one just because he's a journalist, and Bakari Sellers like works on a lot of cases that we don't know about. We'll never hear about in the news because most police killings don't make the news. And Bakari Sellers is out there fighting the good fight without accolades, without trying to gin up publicity. When we talked a couple of weeks ago uh, about how the worst jail in America is in Richland County, well, only one person has successfully sued him. That's Bakari Sellers, right? Um, he's gone up against Leon Lott. So again, when you attack people who are out there working for black people, somebody should say that. Another guy asked, and I want to get the question right because he asked, I think he asked, what would I do if if all the white people, I woke up and all the black people were gone, or all the white people, the white people were dead or something like that. And it's like an interesting thought exercise, right? Like, what if you wake up and all the white people were gone? Well, it's a question I've contemplated, not because I'd be fantasizing about white people dying, but I had recently read a book called, you should read it, it's really good. It's called, what's it called? Sky Full of Elephants. And it's by Sibo Campbell, I think. And that's the premise of the book is one day, all the white people in America walked into the sea and drowned themselves, and what America looked like and what the world looked like after that. So that's the only reason I've contemplated. I don't be thinking about white people dying. But in general, I would probably be sad, right? Like, I don't hate white people, right? When you point out the truth of history, it's uncomfortable for some people, and that leads some people to think you hate white people. But the point is, like, I got white friends. Like, I again, I was just telling you, I watched Game of Thrones. Like, it wouldn't be no more Game of Thrones. And the point is that all of the blend of the cultures is what makes the world great. And the attack on one group of people, black people, or the group of people who are not white, is what we should be concerned about, right? But not because white people are evil. Right? That's the whole point of equality. That's the whole point of diversity. That's the whole point of equity, not to eliminate the white people, right? But to have everybody on an equal footing and give everybody access to opportunity and the ability to achieve based on their education and experience and ability and talent. So I don't hate white people. Now, I don't have to praise white people either, because you can open up the next tab on your browser or open up anything on your internet, and white people gonna be getting their due, right? Like, it's gonna be a white man getting his accolades for inventing something. A white man's gonna be getting praise for doing something mediocre. And so, like, I generally tend not to center them because everything else centers them. So you don't have you don't have to believe, even if you think that white people are responsible for, like, most of the harm, like most of the violence that has been inflicted on other people in the world. There's a good reason for that. It's because, like, generally they're the colonizers, right? Like, nobody else is trying to go to another land and just take it over, right? There are nomadic peoples. But, like, just for the sake of profit, that's white people bag. They got that down. And so to criticize I live in a country that was colonized by white people through violence. And when I talk about history, it's impossible to avoid who's committed most of the violence. That ain't, hey, I hate violence, but that doesn't mean I hate white people. Another question is, hold on, let me see if I missed any of your questions that who are actually here today. Somebody says everybody in South Carolina knows Bakari Sellers. Like, they really do. Like, again, I come from a country family, y'all. Like, we cook. We that's who we are. Everybody knows my family in South Carolina too. But everybody knows my family cooks, and we're country, and we've kind of like preserved history. You've seen the wake up call with my aunt. sh- by the way, she's just been in the news for opening another Black History Museum. So shout out to Janie. This is her birthday weekend, y'all. So she's having a big party. I'm not going to be there. I'll be in New York. But I think my sister Carmelita will be there. But anyway, one day, when the museum, the International African American Museum in Charleston opened, I was there, and Bakari was there, and Bakari was like, "Hey man, just like let's just go have dinner." And there was this. I was staying downtown Charleston. There was this restaurant. I was like, "Oh, you can't get into that restaurant." Everybody was saying, "You can't get into that restaurant." And Bakari's like, "Yeah, just meet me outside and we'll just walk over to this restaurant." And I was like, "Bakari, they said we can't get into that restaurant." And then we get to the restaurant and the sign outside, like there are people waiting outside. And then there's a sign on the door that says like you have to have a jacket and tie on. And I got like I think I had on like a regular t-shirt. And Bakari had on like jeans and like a Fat Farm t-shirt. And he walks in and say, "Hey, we need a table." And they like manufacture a table. Like it's like you see in the mobster movies when they pull the waiters drag the table out of nowhere and put it in the middle of the floor. That's literally what they did just because Bakari said we needed a table. So yeah, everybody knows Bakari. Um and like I think we probably were the only black people in there too. But yeah, everybody knows Bakari. And that's another thing about the South is that I think that people who are not from the South don't understand that like the people they talk about being MAGA and they demonize the Trump supporters, the like most virulent upholders of white supremacists. Like we live and work and be around those people every day in the South. Like I think the rest of the world generally doesn't understand the dynamics of real politics, especially the people you see on TV. They don't understand that like these are a separate group of people who be in the back room smoking cigars. Like I see these people at Walmart when I'm paying my water bill. These are people we around. The funny thing about, Jim Crow being in the South is that people think Jim Crow was in the South, but Jim Crow was in the North too. It was just up there longer that the cities naturally segregated themselves. Chicago is one of the most segregated cities in in the world. New York is too. In the South, we live right like the slave owners lived on the same plantations with the slaves. Like, so they went to the North to get the idea of Jim Crow segregation. So we live around those people all of the time. I remember during you remember that debate that Joe Biden froze in? Well, we covered that debate. I was working at the Grill at the time, and we aired that debate live. And we did an after show, and I was on the after show with some more journalists. And we filmed in the studio where the Weather Channel is, because Byron Allen owns the Weather Channel and he owns the Grill. And we were sitting there talking to some people who work at the Weather Channel, and this is in Atlanta. And one of the women at the Weather Channel says, yeah, she was trying to explain Buc-ee's to someone who was from New York. And she was like, yeah, that's where the Proud Boys hang out. And they were like, wait, what? What do you mean? Like, that's where the Proud Boys hang out? And she's like, yeah, or you'll see people with MAGA hats. And it was like, what? You'll see people and they were stunned that like we see these kind of mythical creatures like, ooh, they're the real white supremacists. Like they were stunned that like they were just out there wearing MAGA hats. And I was like, wait, what do you think the Proud Boys came from? Like, what do you think, who they live? You think they hide out in a basement until they storm capitals? They be walking around and everybody knows who they are. Sometimes they be at, before they have a meeting or something like that, they'll be at Buc-ee's. Sometimes you'll be in Walmart and see somebody with a MAGA hat or 10 somebodies. And I don't think they know, like, I think when they talk about politics in this stratified way, they don't understand that most Americans live in a place where we're navigating, not in theory, but in reality, that situation that they're describing on TV as so black and white and without nuance. That's why Contraband Camp exists. And that's why many people don't, like, especially people on the East Coast, don't understand that. Like, look, if black people hated white people, like, we'd explode with anger because there's more of them. We live around them. You have to attend their schools and abide by their rules and work with them. Like the idea that black people hate white people is absurd to me. Like, show me the mass massacre of white people that's ever happened in history. Hasn't happened. Like what? Like what is the evidence for all of this? Black people hate white people, or black people don't like white people. I know where the evidence is. Right? It is the fact that black people, again, back to the beginning, are willing to talk about race. And if we're being truthful about it, it sounds like black people hate white people, just like it would sound when I criticize Stephen A. Smith. It would sound like, oh, he don't like Stephen A. Smith, and not the thing that Stephen A. Smith did. Right? I'm criticizing the thing that he did, and people jump to the, oh, he hates Stephen A. Smith. I don't know him. I don't know most white people. I grew up in an all black house, in an all black neighborhood, in a town that was about 50-50. So I like, where would I even, I have white friends just like I have black friends, probably more black, just because, again, as a result of segregation and how I was raised. But like my homeboy Ben, whenever I go to South Carolina, I hate that I went this week, a couple weekends ago, and didn't get to kick it with Ben. But like, I don't know any black person was like that doesn't know or have a relationship with any white person. It's impossible to do, right? My sister who's on here, like she kicks it. Like Mr. Pork is a good dude, right? And like, it's not. I don't know if it's an anomaly or not, right? Because most of the people that I know, most of the people that I spend my time with, most of the people that I know my family spends their time with, are good people. I don't know who. I don't care who they voted for. What we care about is their interpersonal relationship and how they treat us. But like, the idea, like, I don't know what it would mean for black people to hate white people, or for me to hate white people. What would that mean, right? Like we watching this on a white owned businesses live stream. So like, hating white people would mean that I didn't. Well, there's probably some white people in this room right now, right? And I I I don't have time to hate white people or anybody, right? I try to distance myself from people that I don't like personally or that affect me negatively. So, nah, I don't hate white people. And if all of them died, I would be sad. I mean, no more Game of Thrones. Who who's going to make all the country music? I like country music. Who's going to make all the good country music with no more white people? Who's going to, you know what, like, this, like, white people be in their bag when they be doing some stuff, right? Like, like for instance, right? When it comes to um the different ways that you can mix vinegar, lemon juice, and baking soda for cleaning shit. Like white people have figured all of that shit out. Like you can go on, like white people know how to make a cleaning solution, use vinegar for anything. I'm sure it's white people right now driving around with a car that runs on vinegar. Vinegar, baking soda, and some lemon juice. White people do wonders with that shit, bro. Like I'm telling you, there are no there is no one who excelled in the area of lemon juicery than white people, right? White people will take a stain out your clothes with lemon juice. They'll like I mean it had to be white people who start putting lemon juice um on seafood. That's got to be a white thing, right? That's cracking open a lobster, cooking it over a fire, and then saying, you know what, this needs some lemon juice. That's got to be some white people. Like, where would we get that kind of innovation from if we didn't? If we didn't have white people, you know what else? White people have also mastered. Man, white people can leave a room real fast. Like if you with black people, you gonna say bye. Then you're gonna stand on the porch and talk a while. Then you're gonna sit in the car and talk. Like white people can just get the fuck up out of there. They say let's rock and roll, and they be gone in like 3 minutes. Right? Like white people have mastered that. Um, Saying goodbye. Um, all the vinegar and lemon juice concoctions, baking soda too. Um, there's a lot of areas, and I'm joking here, but my point is that like we come from a society where like everybody contributes, and only one group of society kind of gets the credit. But what we want is just like an equal society. Like um, there's somebody said raisins in a potato salad. Like so, I don't even like to be taking credit for this, right? But that like I was the one who pointed out that white people like years ago, like maybe 10 years ago, there was a New York Times article like what is the best recipe for potato salad? And they chose one with raisins in it. And I was like, that's crazy. And I wrote about it. And thus began the meme of raisins in a potato salad. I don't want to, toot my own horn, but because I didn't invent raisins in a potato salad, that was a white concoction too. But I pointed out that raisins in the potato salad is the whitest thing that might have ever happened. And I remember I wrote an article on, uh, they said remember Dyson was making hair dryers, like the most powerful hair dryer was made by Dyson. And there was another, I love to read recipes in the New York Times by white people. White recipes. Again, bravo, white people. White recipe. Y'all, there was a recipe in the New York Times, and I wrote about it. You can Google Michael Harriet Dyson chicken or something like that. I wrote an article about the New York Times had a recipe for Dyson chicken, hair dryer chicken. And that was crazy. Like, buy this really $200 expensive hair dryer so you can make some good chicken. Dyson roast chicken was crazy. So, like, again, we salute you, white people. Dyson roast chicken. And I'm not even criticizing raisins in a potato salad because, like, I make a couscous with craisins in it, cran raisins. That it's the bomb now. Now I don't want no raisins in my potato salad, but like, what's that salad? Ambrosia salad. Do you know what that is? It's like grapes and mayonnaise and a salad. Again, bro, I'm never gonna eat that shit. I've never tasted it, so I can't say it doesn't taste bad. But whoever was sitting home talking, thinking about putting grapes and raisins together, bravo. That was one of the greatest innovations in white history, right? Ambrosia. First of all, like my mama would have beat my butt if I would have messed up that many grapes. Grapes are very, very, very precious um, in black households because you only get them like once or twice a week. Um, Judith says she like ambrosia salad. See, I know the recipe wasn't invented just for me, right? That's what makes America great, right? Ambrosia salad and potato salad and fried chicken and Dyson roast chicken, all from the same country. Like that's diversity, right? All from the same country. Grapes and mayonnaise and potato salad and dropping a thigh in hot grease and some people blow their thighs with a hair dryer, right? Just same country, same place. That's what that really that's what makes America great, right? Um, they are the only group of people that didn't build or create. All around the world, they've stole what other civilizations. Oh, it's so that's so complex, right? I used to teach this. What you have to understand is uh, like what cultures come from, and a culture of scarcity has to be warlike. Like if you can't grow shit in the ground, then your only option to feed your growing population is to take territory. So your innovation is war. Like that's what you contributed. That's what your contributions to your culture becomes war. And it's not all, again, I don't even like saying it's not all white people, but eventually people who ruled Europe were the people who were the best at war. The best killers eventually ruled Europe in a way that like the that wasn't really like that on other continents. You can take Genghis Khan, who was a nomadic tribe, but other than that, right? Like the best rulers usually won because people usually defected to that side. You can look in Africa, in West Africa, not and even in the Pharaohic dynasties, it wasn't the best warriors in South America and early North America. There were a lot of nomadic tribes, but they didn't really have to worry about territory. Like it was a bunch of land in North America. In Mexico and South America, there were territorial disputes, right? But both of those periods, like the things when you read like South American history, Mesoamerican history, what you understand is like the interesting thing about that is like there was a war, and that ruling family ruled for 500 years, which like is like it's unheard of on European continent. Like there are all these international and intertribal battles, and then you look in other continents' histories, and you'll see like, okay, that family, this dynasty, like China had dynasties that ruled for like hundreds, sometimes some of them thousands of years, and in South America, you'd see like this Mesoamerican ruler like expanded their territory, or like this kingdom was right beside this kingdom. And in a culture of scarcity, you need territory. So the most violent culture often wins, right? It's interesting when you read about the history of the Vikings. Like I'm a huge, again, like I don't just study Black history. I'm a huge fan of like Viking history, which is the original example of what I'm talking about, right? So Vikings came from very Nordic places, and although it's problematic to term the group all of those people and all those cultures as Vikings, white people did that, not me. But when you talk about Viking cultures, like their culture was built on, hey, we got a really good advanced boat culture. Why? Like they were the best boat builders in the world. Why? Because they built boats to go raid. And they built boats to go raid because like they couldn't grow shit. Like when the Vikings attacked England at first, right? The first kind of Viking attack was in England, and I can't think of the name, but it's like Landisfarne, right? At Landisfarne. So when the Vikings, God, I can't remember it. Believe that name came to me that fast. So when Vikings attacked Landisfarne, it was like this uh this monastery, kind of like on an outpost. Their goal was like, oh, we just gonna go here and take all their shit and take the shit that we can take back home, and then we're gonna eventually leave some people here so they can farm because we can't farm where we live, and that was kind of how Viking culture, within a few hundred years, most of the English and the French and all of the European leaders had Viking blood. And then you get to 1066, and that, like, those were the descendants of the Vikings takeover of uh, England, and Vikings entering France, and Vikings offering to protect France from England, and all of these political negotiations that came from cultures of scarcity. So, in order to survive, the Vikings kind of took over England and kind of made England less homogenous. And that's why you can't, like, the idea of whiteness, I always say, doesn't exist, because, like, the white people who were Vikings were a whole different culture and a whole different kind of people than the English people. And the English people were different than the French people. And only after like 1066, after like the Angles, the people, even if the people we call Anglo-Saxons, like that, the Saxons were different than the people who considered themselves Anglos, right? So the changing definition of race and culture, when they just merged it as white, it became, again, this pan-European ethic that let the Greeks take credit for the shit that the Vikings did, and the English people got credit for getting their ass kicked by the Vikings. So all of a sudden, white people were warriors because of some shit that the Vikings did that kicked the English. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? It is nothing to hate because it is something that white people made up. So the Viking culture, the English culture, all of those cultures merged and were conquered because they were part of cultures of scarcity. They couldn't feed all of the people, and conquering was their only way to feed each other until capitalism. And there's a good book, I can't think of the name of it right now, about the origins of capitalism. So capitalism, the idea of capitalism came from after the Vikings took over England. There were some people who were the Vikings essentially said, look, all of these lords and barons and dukes who were over this province or over this land, come to our side, we got you. If you don't come to our side, we're going to take your shit, give it to somebody who on our side. And so there was this whole reset of the aristocracy in England. And some of the ones who were serfs all of a sudden became lords and barons. And they started they were landowners now. They were aristocrats, and they were in charge of the peasants and the farm workers. And some of those people, because they came from peasantry, because they came from the lower class, they were like, yo, what if we have this idea that we could feed all the people, everybody worked for the common good. What if we stored our grain? And so they started storing the grain. Of course, they were storing grain under the provincial rule of somebody who was appointed by the Vikings, who didn't give a fuck about that shit anyway. Like, they just wanted allies. And soon, after a couple generations, those people who were appointed by the Vikings be like, yo, we got a lot of grain and some of these people don't. What if we just start selling the grain, right? So the capitalization of resources, like that was kind of the origin of capitalism. People think that capitalism means like using money to get wealth. No, it doesn't, right? It's a social, societal / economic construct in which the capitalization of resources creates a market, right? So the more grain you had stored, the richer you were. And then in the 1400s, some glassmakers in France came up with this idea to make colored glass, and they realized that, hey, we can sell our intellectual property and to own this intellectual property. And the de Medicis gave them what they call a patent on the idea, the idea of making glass, their process for making glass. Now, before then, like, there was not necessarily the idea like of stealing stuff from people's culture, right? Like when people came over, when Europeans came over to Egypt, Egypt was like, yeah, we'll teach like Sophocles and Plato and all of those people. They went to Egypt and he was like, yeah, we'll teach you how to be a philosopher. We'll teach you science. We'll teach you math. Because it wasn't like nobody owned ideas. That was a foreign concept until white people created it. The same thing with land, right? Like when they say conquered America, right? We always hear you can't be mad at white people for conquering America. When white people came here, the indigenous people had no concept of like they thought it was funny that you could, well, y'all want to own this land? I mean, that's crazy, right? Like, you're sure, right? Like, y'all want some sky too? I mean, you give me some more gold, you can get some of the clouds. Own the land, all right? And so when we talk about conquering, right, what you do is introduce an idea into a society that had no concept of that and then kill them for violating the thing that you created, right? Like, why are you on our land? You don't own this land. Yeah, you signed a paper and you killed them for it. Is that really conquering? If you got more guns, right? If you use violence or the threat of violence, not just the threat of violence to enforce an idea that never existed in that society. Like if I just started going into people's houses right now and killing them because I said I own the color green and everybody's house whose green is mine now, that would seem crazy. That's what America did. Like, that's how conquering worked in Europe. If you read Black AF history, I go into a detailed explanation of how, like, the Pope of the Catholic Church settled a dispute between Spain and Portugal by saying, hey, Portugal, y'all can have Africa, and Spain, y'all can have everything else in the Atlantic Ocean, not knowing that North and South America was there. Right? So by signing that treaty, like the people in Africa didn't know that. People in South America and North America didn't know that. The Arawak had no idea what was going on. We say they conquered those places because 4 white men sat in a room and divided up the world. Right? And because they had guns, they could do that. But Is that conquering? Is that conquering? Look, someone said, Michael, we're about to go, but Cynthia DeLangelo said, Michael, I'm constantly concerned about what we can do to survive this period. So here's the thing that we got to understand, right? Like, there is no surviving this period. This is the thing that Black people have always understood, right? When we were out there protesting lynching and fighting lynching, we were out there fighting during the civil rights movement. The reason we were fighting, the reason we were out there, like, is because we knew that we could not survive. Like, arbitrarily, some of us were going to be chosen to be lynched. There is no safe, like, you can't protest safely. You can't do anything to ensure your survival in an authoritarian regime. Most of the Black people who've ever lived in this continent have lived under a worse authoritarian regime than we have now. There is nothing that you can do to ensure your survival. Some of us are going to die. So they're going to kill some of us. Not because we're out there fighting, but because that is their goal. So you might as well fight anyway. And that's the thing, right? Like, there is no way to protest safely because there's no way to live safely in this country anymore. There is no way to survive this Trump regime without joining them. Either you're going to be right or dead. That is their goal. Everybody who ain't on our side, we're going to defund them. If they live in a state that is blue, we're going to defund them. If they are needy and gets SNAP benefits, we're going to let their children starve. They live in a majority Black city, we're going to invade it with the military. If they say something on the internet, we're going to come and raid their house. They write an article about me, I'm going to send the FBI into their apartment to confiscate all of their computers. If they use the justice system to prosecute me for real crimes, I'm going to prosecute them for fake crimes. They don't lower the interest rate like I want them to do. I'm going to say that they were trying to build, like, just charge them with a fake crime, really. They say something about me on TV, I'm going to make MSNBC fire them. If they say something, I'm going to make CNN kick them to the curb. I'm going to ensure that CBS, CNN, NBC, ABC all capitulate. If they're not white and they're at Harvard, going to make sure they're kicked out. Going to attack Harvard and say, look, more white people. I want to see your voter register, your acceptance statistics. There is no way to survive this. They want you to die. This is the America from 1619 to 1865, from 1865 to 1965, from 1965. Let's just change a little bit, right? Because we fought them. Because a lot of people died fighting. And then now we're back here. But people you couldn't just smile at your slave master and know that you were going to survive. You couldn't just, you couldn't look at a white woman, right? Like, just not whistling at a white woman wasn't a guarantee that you wouldn't be lynched. They could just say, hey, He looked at me funny. Look what they did to Emmett Till. How was Emmett Till like going to know that he was going to survive? Like Emmett Till probably thought that he would survive. Right? Medgar Evers probably thought that he would survive. Like, ain't no way to survive. They gonna kill us. That's the point. You can't protest peacefully and expect them to treat you peacefully. Not blocking an ICE officer don't guarantee that they're not gonna kick in your door. Being nice to these ICE officers doesn't get you out of harm's way. Being brown in America, they are going to get you out of this country. It doesn't matter if you have your citizenship papers on you. They're going to treat you like you an immigrant. And the thing we have to understand is that, like, Martin Luther King, especially on Martin Luther King weekend, let's exempt Martin Luther King received letters from the FBI telling him to kill himself. Martin Luther King was stabbed before. Martin Luther King was not under any illusion that him being peaceful would make him safer. They understood, like, all of those people who were in the streets, all of those people who made America a democracy, understood that there was no way to survive unless you dethrone the killers. Other than that, you gotta hide under your bed and hope they don't come knocking on your door. And that is the thing that you gotta wrestle with. Like, you can't be safe. If you black, if you brown, if you're not Christian, if you are not MAGA, you can't be safe. And the only other option that you have is to fight. And not just for you, right? Like, I'm sure Martin Luther King said he knew, like, he would not benefit from his fight. He knew that what his fight was for was not so Martin Luther King would survive, or that his daughters would survive. But if you're going to live in a country, right, there is no, like, everybody lives in fear. There is no peace until there is justice, as he said, right? Like, again, when we go back to the beginning of this, like, why you got to be talking about race, right? Because it's, some people some people feel uncomfortable when they hear it. But as King said, like, peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of justice. That's why people say no justice, no peace, right? Because it is true. You can't live peacefully. You can't have peace. Some people can if you're white, because you get justice, right? Like, there is a whole system of justice that has been configured to protect you. But for the rest of us, there is no peace because there is no justice. If you don't have due process, if you don't have the same constitutional rights as everybody else, if there is an armed, trained police force out there hunting people who look like you, not you necessarily, right? Because they say they're hunting undocumented immigrants who committed crimes. But if you're undocumented and haven't committed a crime, that doesn't save you. If you're a documented immigrant who looks like an undocumented immigrant, right, who might be Hispanic, that doesn't protect you from getting slammed onto the ground. If you pay your taxes and have your ID and all of that, none of that saves you. The only thing that saves you is ending the injustice. And survival should be the last thing on your mind. Because, I mean, it's not possible for I mean, you might get lucky. Yeah, that's the only thing you can be lucky. Like, they might not get you this time. Other than that, man, the only thing you can do is wake up. We'll see y'all next time.